CBN Israel's Mati Shoshani joins us now from just outside Jerusalem with massive news out of Lebanon. Now, my friend, it appears as though the IDF is maybe once and for all going to take out Hezbollah, Iran's kind of crown jewels of proxies. What can you tell us is happening right now on the border with Lebanon?
So here's the scoop. Iran is doing everything they can to hold on to their government. They're playing survival mode to the extreme. And what we're looking at right now is them trying to do that also in Lebanon. I mean, I'll put Iran for a second. We'll get to that probably in a bit. Lebanon is, as you said, Hezbollah is like the mother of all proxies. We're talking well over $1 billion a year to keep a terrorism organization going, plus a bunch of illegal activities that added more cash to their bank accounts. A very, very wealthy, very, very strongly embedded terrorist organization. They took a very substantial beating from the IDF in the last 2 years. So much so that the Iranian overlords were really concerned that they wouldn't be willing to fight alongside them. So about a week before this last war started, 2 weeks ago now, they sent a bunch of their IRGC officers to Hezbollah to make sure that when time comes to press the red buttons, they press the red buttons. The problem is that the IDF has been playing a completely different game in Lebanon for over a year now. We don't allow Hezbollah back to their stations. We don't allow them back to the villages south of the Litani River. So we're talking within a range of several dozen miles of the Israeli-Lebanon border. And what they did early this week is they launched several missiles, and then the IDF saw that they were sort of gearing up to a conflict. We bombed several of their positions, by the way, the night before the operation started. So that's Thursday and Friday night. We bombed several of their command centers and several of their leaders. And then in recent days, this is so today, yesterday, we've added several more positions within Lebanon. And just for people who aren't really following, and it's sort of hard to follow everything that's happening, Israel during these last 2.5 years, we've set up several forward positions in Syria and in Lebanon. And they're essentially sitting at these high points, of which if we don't hold on to them, they'll be able to use them to fire and to take missiles, etc., into Israel. So we're holding on to those positions. In recent days, we've taken that line of 4 fortifications within Lebanon, and we've made it close to 10. Some of them are sort of still in construction. And then earlier today, actually, Hezbollah has been poking to see what the IDF will do and how they will be responding. And behind the scenes, the Iranians are screaming and pushing all the red buttons and pulling all the levers that they can to try and get Hezbollah to fight against Israel and draw some of the Israeli focus and firepower away from bombing Iran proper and to fighting Hezbollah. That's really the backstory to what's happening here. And from the Israeli perspective, we had to recruit, I think it was 3 divisions a day and a half ago to go into the northern sort of front, fortify it, and get ready for a proper semi-invasion. What does that look like? That looks like us pushing back much of the population from southern Lebanon. It's already happened before. This is not all population. It's the population that supports Hezbollah. That's an important distinction to make. And the reason they support Hezbollah is because Hezbollah comes from that population. So that's a long story. I don't want to go too long on this answer.
Right. Well, you see these videos coming out of southern Lebanon of, hundreds of thousands of people in traffic jams trying to get out of southern Lebanon. I think the orders were also to evacuate certain parts of Beirut that were, heavily involved with Hezbollah activities. Yeah, the president of Lebanon just kind of sort of officially banned Hezbollah. The Lebanese prime minister called Hezbollah's war against Israel illegal acts. It sounds like there's this dichotomy happening between, not that this is new, but like the government of Lebanon, Israel's actions and what they're being told to do from Iran. It seems like this is coming to a head, and there might be some sort of decisive battle, I guess you could say. This doesn't seem like just another skirmish. So maybe last question about Lebanon. What should we be looking on our news channels to see? What do you think is going to happen? Obviously, we don't know the future, but what do you think is going to happen here? Is this the end of Hezbollah, or is this just hey, let's really diminish their capabilities, but maybe not take them out completely, or is this the final chapter?
I think that's a really good question. I'd usually hesitate to answer with these kind of questions. In this case, the future is quite clear. Hezbollah is already done in the sense of they're never going to go back to being the organization they were before October of 2023. That's never coming back again. The reason for that is not just Hezbollah itself, it's the fact that Iran doesn't have the cash and the power and can't also work within Syria because it's been strengthened by the US in the way they did in the past. That relationship is never coming back. And it's just a question of how degraded will Hezbollah be compared to what they used to be. Their fighting force was eliminated by about 50% last year. Many of their fighters and leaders were or hospitalized or maimed in the pager attack. And the list goes on. But in reality, right now, what we're looking at is an already weakened organization that has lost many of its top fighters, the majority of its leadership, by the way, in several different iterations, not in one sitting, and has fallen back from its villages, which are its base of support. It's lost its sources of income and can't go back to its fighting stations. And again, Hezbollah is not an army in the traditional sense. Hezbollah is a very well, let's call it articulated terrorist organization. They only work if they can threaten Israel. It doesn't work if they have to sort of find their way to the front lines every single time. And what's happening now in Lebanon is sort of a continuation of the relationship with Israel. There's a thrust that's coming from the US side, which is let's rebuild Lebanon with Ayoun, the current president, who is counter Hezbollah. Their army is pushing against Hezbollah. Just today, they issued an order saying that Iranians need a visa to now enter into Lebanon. The reason, by the way, is that the Iranians were using diplomatic cover to bring in cash to pay Hezbollah salaries. There's a backstory to that too. And so we're in this very interesting position where Hezbollah is never going to be strong again, not in that traditional sense. They're never going to have the same number of fighters that they did in the past. And what the IDF is doing now is saying very, very clearly, guys, if there was any miscommunication here, we're not going back to where we were before the war. We're also not going back to where we were in the beginning of 24, where Hezbollah was just using the villages close to the Israeli border to launch an endless barrage of anti-tank missiles and mortars and rockets, et cetera, at all the Jewish communities close to the Lebanese border where Hezbollah controlled.
You know, I was at a Israeli town. I think it was Miskavam. I'm not exactly sure. A few years ago, right on the border with Lebanon, and there was this gigantic Iranian flag there.
Yeah,
and I was like, wow, like this is real. And you know, the idea that Iranians now need a visa. Obviously, things are changing so rapidly. And I guess from the outsider's perspective, obviously, Mati, you are just a wealth of information. Have to have you back on again and again, but Hassan Nasrallah, Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, Ayatollah Khamenei, like seems like all the big guys have been killed. So why is this regime still breathing? And why is this regime still being able to almost suicidally fire drones at Kuwait and Bahrain and UAE? And it seems like there's no one in control, but they're still operating. So one will, if or will ever in the near future, this regime finally crumble.
I think that's the billion or trillion dollar question, really. And what people probably miss about this is Iran isn't Saddam Hussein. Iran isn't Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. It's not a one-man show. It's not a strongman dictatorship. It's a party that has a very, very robust layer of religious, political, financial individuals that are connected all together, and they control everything in Iran. They control the military in two different versions, both the Iranian army and the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Plus, they have a very substantial volunteer corps, which is called the Basij, which is similar to the Hitler brown shirts, if that rings a bell for people. Volunteers that are sort of enforcers of the culture and the law of the regime and the snitches on people within the population. And they control everything in the economy. They control the trade, the cash, the commerce, every element, every public tender is in the hands of those people within the government. So it's not just a handful of people that once are eliminated, the country topples and then something else is built. It's a thick layer of people that need to be removed. I want to say this though positively. A lot of those people were removed. I mean, we're talking 40 people on day number one and several other bombing missions that carried out that removed a lot of the big heads of the organization. And where do we see the fruit of that? In the fragmentation that's already taking place in Iran. Where do we see this? You see it in two different things. One voice that says, hey guys, we want to negotiate with the Americans. And at the very same time, a completely contrary voice that says, we are going to bomb everyone who cooperated with the US, everyone who cooperated with Israel. So we're sending ballistic missiles over Turkey into NATO countries. We're sending them, it's crazy, to Cyprus.
Crazy.
We're sending them to Cyprus. We're threatening countries in Europe. We're bombing, attacking the Saudis, the Qataris, the Kuwaitis. anyone who has a base where someone with an American flag on his plane landed or refueled or something like that. So that side is going all in. So you see, there's really a split in what they're saying and how they're doing. They've lost that sense of cohesion that they had completely in the past. It shows you they're on their way down. And I think that the important thing to track with is one of two. Governments don't get replaced by bombing. I mean, you can remove one government with bombing. You can't build with bombs. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the people build up something or physically come in, Marshall Plan style, and rebuild a country and an economy and an educational system, etc. So what do we know? About a day ago, the CIA goes public and says, hey, there are holes in the Iranian border, and we're helping the Kurdish rebels come in. President Trump says, as usual, some very, snide comments about, if this is happening, we think we'd really want to support it, which means it is happening. So they're supporting the Kurdish rebels against the Iranian regime. And then there's another element to this, which is this whole setup is Trump and the Israeli government saying to the Iranian people, guys, we're going to do everything we can to give you the best fighting chance you've had at least 47 years, to remove this terrible government, the Ayatollah regime. That's where we are today. It might be, by the way, just timeline, it might be weeks. All it takes is a single launcher and a single ballistic missile to send everyone in Israel or everyone in Saudi or everyone in the UAE into the bomb shelters or to launch their air defense systems. It might be a more prolonged conflict. Trump has alluded to this. Netanyahu has alluded to this. High uppers in the Israeli army have talked about this. This isn't a one-week event. This is going to be several weeks of it drawing out and slowly coming to some kind of conclusion where it's or a squeeze on the Iranian regime or it falls. And that's really what I'm hoping for.
Incredible insight, my friend. I know you're in the reserve, so stay safe, my friend. Toda rabba, and God bless, Mati.
Thank you, Raj.